Hello friends, so today I'm going to discuss Monica Ali's Brick Lane, the last few chapters and also certain issues related to Monica Ali's Brick Lane. The issues have already been written there on the blackboard. And hi, I'm Dr. Narugopal Mukherjee, Associate Professor of English, Bankura Christian College. And here are my students of the 6th semester English department. And we are going to have a lively discussion on Monica Ali's Brick Lane, certain issues related to Brick Lane. And the issues that you find here, I have already pointed them out. One is Bangladeshi diaspora, means what sort of diasporic life we come across here in the novel. Secondly, we will try to find out or trace out the change that we find in Nazneen, the growth of Nazneen, the central character. And then we find the two other important characters that are also there in the novel. One is Chanu, as you all know. Chanu, Nazneen's husband, and Korim, that middleman, quite younger to Nazneen, yet Nazneen's favorite now in England. So we come across all three main characters. Of course, Nazneen is the central character there. There is also Chanu and again also Korim. Chanu more or less remains a flat character, as we all know. Does not have that much change in him or metamorphosis in him. Korim also remains a more or less type character, flat character, does not really undergo any major change, any significant metamorphosis in the course of the novel. But one who is there always at the center of the novel and who is always there going through certain changes. In fact, this whole novel becomes a kind of Bildungsroman, growth of the main character, the development of the main character, evolution of the main character, that is Nazneen. Nazneen goes through drastic changes in the course of the novel. When we met her for the first time, as we all know in the first few chapters of the novel, we found her to be a typically traditional Orthodox Muslim married woman, all the time dependent on her husband, all the time dependent on what the society says about women, having no value, no judgment system of her own. So her whole identity, her whole existence was dependent upon her husband. She was just another part of the identity of her husband. As if she was none, she had no value in the human world. So from that status of a dependent woman, an orthodox woman, we gradually come across a change in the course of the novel. Later we find, towards the end of the novel, in the last few chapters of the novel, in fact, we find that she is a completely changed woman. She does not have any orthodox values that she used to cherish or used to pursue earlier. Now she is not only financially self-dependent, but also otherwise self-dependent, can take a judgment of her own. As I said in the beginning, she was an Orthodox Muslim woman belonging to a traditional Hindu family, a Muslim family. But now we find, in the last few chapters of the novel, we find she has come out of those orthodox ideas about a married woman in a Muslim family. She even becomes physically close, sexually close to that middleman Korim. And she is so passionate about it. It is not that she has certain compulsions, certain obligations. Rather, she does everything voluntarily, deliberately, purposefully to change, to explore how far she is sexually provocative, how far she is, what sort of sexual potential she has within herself. She is judging that, assessing that, evaluating that. So look, she is a very passionate woman, passionate about her physical relationship. She does not suffer from any guilty conscience, like a traditional married woman in a Hindu family or in a Muslim family. Rather, she is very much passionate about it, emotional about it. In one particular chapter, we find the chapter that I discussed with you in my last class. You found how passionate she is in her sex, in a sexual relationship. She is very much aggressive, violent, and passionate. So this particular aspect in her character shows that she is no longer that timid, submissive, soft-hearted woman, rather a completely changed woman who can be violent, aggressive, even in her sexual relationship. Secondly, she is financially self-dependent now, the point that I raised earlier, because she has, when her husband loses his job and is almost unemployed, does not have any income, it is that Nazneen, that woman who takes care of the household, who takes every care of the household by sewing dresses, clothing, and so on. That way, we find that Nazneen is now economically solvent, not solvent as such, but self-dependent. Does not depend on anyone else right now. At the end of the novel, in the last two chapters, you will again find that when Karim wants to know what she will do without him in England, if she does not marry him, she says, I don't really choose you, or I'm not going to choose you as my husband. I don't think I can carry on with you as my husband. Rather, I will lead a life of my own, where there will be no man to support her. There will be no man to be there to support a woman, as we find in the traditional novels, dealing with a traditional Hindu or Muslim family. Rather, we find she can exist with her two daughters, again two female characters, two daughters. No male character is there in her house right now after the departure of her husband back to Bangladesh. When he goes back to Bangladesh, she does not go with him, because she feels that now she has to enjoy this freedom in England. Means this freedom to be there all alone without any support of a man. So that way, she becomes self-dependent, not only financially, but socially, politically, culturally. We find in every respect she emerges as a very powerful woman. This is what we find to be dealt with by Monica Ali, women empowerment, the transformation of a woman from a typical village girl to one who can take care of herself in a foreign land like England and in the metropolitan city of London. She can take care of herself with her two daughters there, staying there with her, and completely being estranged or separated from her husband. She's quite capable of that. And she wants to prove that she can. And that's why she rejects the proposal of marriage coming from Karim. She could have taken that proposal quite gladly. It could have been a very good choice for her. But she did not stick to that man and did not choose that man as her husband, because she wanted to prove to the world that she, a woman, can do something of her own. In fact, this is not the only character who does something of her own. We find her sister is also there, Hasina. That Hasina is another self-dependent woman. However, she is immature, quite young. And that's why we cannot really take her seriously. At the age of 16, she ran away, had that marriage of elopement, runaway marriage. At the age of 16 only. And whatever she did, she changed her husband from one to another, moved from one husband to another, moved from one particular man to another. At the end of the novel, when her last letter comes for Nazneen, there we come to know she has written in her letter that she is changing her partner always, no longer sticking to any particular man, because she has lost faith in man, in man's world. She has lost faith in patriarchy, or a world dominated by the male only. Rather, she knows that she has to do something as a woman and has to do that of her own, without being dependent on, without really keeping her faith on any particular man. In the last chapter, when Chanu, Nazneen's husband, has already gone back to Bangladesh, and from there he makes telephone calls to Nazneen sometimes. And in one of those calls, he informs, means Chanu informs his wife Nazneen, Nazneen in England, you know. Chanu from Bangladesh informs his wife in London that Hasina was traced out. Hasina could be found, but then Hasina again ran away, and finally ran away with a cook, without marrying that man, because Hasina has lost faith in the institution of marriage. In fact, Nazneen has also lost partially her faith in the institution of marriage, although she is not separated from her husband, separated physically, but not in respect of their relationship. Their relationship continues even though they are in two different continents, in two extremely opposite places. Yet they remain the husband and the wife, Chanu and Nazneen. So their relationship, marital relationship, is not really disturbed or does not terminate at the end of the novel, like Hasina, like that of Hasina. Hasina's marital relationship is hazardous, troublesome, but what we come to know in the course of the novel is that Hasina can take care of herself in the world of men, as Nazneen can in a foreign land, in a strange land, completely separated from her husband, from her traditional orthodox society. Yet she is quite dependent on herself. And this is the transformation that we find in her character, the growth that we find in her character. Nazneen decides not to go back to Bangladesh like the other immigrants. As I said earlier, Chanu is going back to Bangladesh now after 30 years of stay in London, in the metropolitan city of London. He is going back after 30 years. Can you imagine? That after 30 years of stay, one can say that he is a Bangladeshi, not a man of London, not a man of England, but he said so to the conductor of the bus. That means he does not lose his Bangladeshi identity even after such a prolonged stay in the city of London. He does not lose his identity as a Bangladeshi man. So this is another level of, another layer of, another perspective of diaspora that we find here. Usually diaspora or such people, diasporic community, they lose the members of that community lose their original identity, native identity after maybe 10 or 12 years of stay. They lose all about that original identity. But Chanu does not. Chanu still sticks to his Bangladeshi identity. This is something unique in this novel, because in no other novel we find this sort of identity to be retained by any character, even in the foreign land. Chanu does that, and Chanu, when he goes back to Bangladesh, he goes back to his own country as a native of Bangladesh, not really an immigrant going back to his country, rather a Bangladeshi man coming home. So this is Bangladeshi diaspora. In the course of the novel, we also come to know about different aspects of Bangladeshi diaspora here. First generation of diaspora, second generation of diaspora. First generation of diaspora, Dr. Azad, Chanu, even Nazneen, Razia, Mrs. Islam, they all belong to the first generation of diaspora, and they all stick to their traditional orthodox norms, traditional culture. Whereas the second generation of immigrants, Dr. Azad's daughter, Nazneen's two daughters, particularly the elder one, Shahana. Then we also come to know about Razia's son, Tariq. If you make an evaluation of all these characters, the young ones, you find that none of them has any faith in the traditional orthodox practices or culture, Bangladeshi culture, Sylheti culture, or Bangladeshi culture in general. Rather, all of them believe that they are already uprooted from their original land, means from the land of the ancestors, and here in the foreign land, they are in a nowhere situation. They are not full-fledged Bangladeshis here, although their parents are. They are not full-fledged natives of England, like the original inhabitants of that country, like English men and women, young men and women. They are not really English people. So they are having a kind of hybrid identity, hyphenated identity, Bangladeshi, English young men and women, with a hyphen between Bangladeshi and English. So this hyphenated identity is what is worrying all of them. That's why we find Dr. Azad's daughter is alcoholic. Razia's son, Tariq, he is addicted to drugs because this is his frustration that results in his drug addiction. Shahana, towards the end of the novel, Shahana in fact runs away from her house because she feels that she will be forcibly taken to Bangladesh by her parents. So she runs away in utter frustration, being fully desperate. Although fortunately, Nazneen could find out her, could trace out her, and so she could be saved. However, this running away from the safety and security of her home cannot be compared with what Hasina did at the age of 16. Hasina had her runaway marriage with a man by her side. That man was a kind of protector, safeguarded. The man safeguarded her all the time or escorted her. But when Shahana, as a parallel to that, when Shahana ran away towards the end of this novel, Shahana ran away with a girl by her side, not really with any man. However, as I said, when they were at a restaurant, and fortunately Nazneen could trace out them. Karim was with her, with Nazneen at that time, when they were trying to find out the two missing girls, and they could be traced out at a restaurant. So fortunately, she could be saved. But Tariq became a drug addict. Dr. Azad's daughter had already turned into an alcoholic figure. So look, this addiction for alcohol, addiction for drugs, or this desperation on the part of Shahana, these are in fact the marks of a frustrated community, depressed community, the young generation. They were so much depressed in the foreign land. However, it is because of Nazneen again that Shahana is not only saved, but Shahana finally, we find, accepts whatever her mother has to say to her. When Chanu goes back to Bangladesh and takes leave from them, he has his departure from his home. Shahana is a changed girl now. Shahana asked her father, we earlier found always an antagonism between the father and the daughter. None of them could really tolerate one another. But at the end, even Shahana asked, how will you get along there with father in Bangladesh, in Dhaka, without Amma, means without mother being there with you? And he said, Chanu said, I can do everything on my own. I am a better cook than your mother. That means I can take care of myself. Look, whatever he said so definitely from the point of view of a man, from the point of view of a husband who must be self-dependent, who must be really free from all these drawbacks. He asserts that male identity at the end, that he can take care of himself. But what Sahana says, that is important here. Sahana is a changed girl now. And this change comes again because of Nazneen. Nazneen, at the end of the novel, although she is separated from her husband, she maintains a very good relationship with her husband. And her husband expects that at any point of time, on any day, these three would join him there in Bangladesh. Means would go to Bangladesh like him and would join him there. He has still that hope alive. Nazneen never has frustrated him. Nazneen always rather says that you must do this or do that, you must take care of this or that, you must also take care of Hasina, who is there in Bangladesh, her sister. So that way, they maintain a very good relationship between them. The ideal kind of relationship that a husband and a wife should have, having no bitterness, no antagonism, no slightest hatred between them. Rather, they are or they appear to be quite a good couple, an ideal couple at the end of the novel. And at that time, we find Nazneen is no longer attached to Karim, no longer continuing that physical relationship with Karim. Rather, she is a responsible, dutiful mother, a dutiful wife also, keeping regular contact with her husband, a dutiful, responsible elder sister of Hasina, always asking her husband to find out her and to help her in all possible ways, a responsible mother, a single mother almost you can say, taking single parent, at least in England, taking care of those two girls who are all the time dependent on her for their sustenance, for their living in England. That is what we find towards the end of the novel. If you come to chapter 452 of the novel, you find there Nazneen conveying to Karim, my husband bought the tickets. The flight is tomorrow. The tickets have already been purchased by Chanu. Where has the money come from? The money has come from not Mrs. Islam. Then the money for the tickets to go back to Bangladesh, 4 tickets for the 4 members of the family. Where from has he got the money? Any guess? It is Dr. Azad who has given him the money to buy tickets. So it is not really the money borrowed from Mrs. Islam. Rather, it is the money borrowed from Dr. Azad. With that money, Chanu has bought the tickets, 4 tickets. And with these 4 tickets, he is now planning to go back to Bangladesh. And here we find in this chapter, Nazneen is informing Karim that she is going to Bangladesh and her husband has already bought the tickets. Nazneen does not inform her husband that she has no interest in going there. Rather, she waits for the final hour, just 1 hour before the scheduled departure time from their house. Just 1 hour before that, at 10 they were supposed to leave their house. At 9 only, she informs her husband that she is not going with him. Rather, she will be staying back in England with her 2 daughters, 2 little daughters. Because she was afraid that if she had conveyed that earlier, Perhaps Chanu would have changed her or could have changed her decision. So she did not want to give her that much time to convince her that she should also go. That's why at the 11th hour, you can say, at the last hour only, she said to her husband that she was not going back to Bangladesh. So this way we find that she does not want to leave any opportunity to her husband to change her decision. She is so rigid, so firm in her decision. So she has already taken such a firm resolution that she does not want to allow anybody to change her decision. Not even her husband should change her decision. So that is what we find here. In the next page, page number 453, on the top you find, she makes it clear, we can't get married. He asked, not ever? And she said, not ever. I don't want to marry you, Nazneen said. That's what I mean. I don't want to marry you. Look, a completely different woman now. Earlier, she was so much dependent on Karim. At least she got the sexual satisfaction, sexual pleasure, which she could not have from her husband. And she was so passionate about that relationship. But that very Nazneen is once again a changed woman who knows that after all, she can't be happy with this young man. Exactly what we find in George Bernard Shaw's play, Candida. A young man, 10 years younger to Candida, gives her a proposal, a marriage proposal. A young man of 22 gives a marriage proposal to a married woman of 32, who is having her so-called happy family with her husband, a preacher, means a clergyman, and with her two sons. She's a happy woman, apparently. But that young man then points out how unhappy she is. In fact, she is like a doll to her husband. And this house is a doll's house, what we find in Henrik Ibsen's play, A Doll's House. Henrik Ibsen's play, Norwegian playwright, Henrik Ibsen. Exactly like that, here also Candida finally discovers that she is also like a doll. But when the question of marriage comes, Candida rejects the proposal of Marchbanks, that young man, and says, I can't be happy with you. Because he was so young and he was so wild, so romantic, that you don't know the practical side of life. So I will be there with my husband, but with all the alertness that I am not really the doll here, I should not be. Rather, I should be treated as a full-fledged human being, having a personality, having an esteem of my own. Exactly like that, here Nazneen does not marry Karim, although it could have been a good choice or good decision in that foreign land. But she wants to assert, in fact, Monica Ali, being a female writer, wants to give this message to us that a woman must know how to be dependent upon herself. So this is women empowerment. This is the growth of a woman character. This is the Bildungsroman that we come across, the growth of a Bildungsroman, we can say. Or rather, this evolution we find as in a Bildungsroman in the novel Brick Lane. Now, any question from any one of you?